Hey Evans Head, my name's Dylan. I've been coming up to Beach Mission for the last couple of years, and it's such a shame that we can't meet with you in person, but hopefully some of these videos help to bridge that gap of disconnection this year. I've been asked to speak on grief and loss and just what the Bible has to say about it. So I encourage you to get your Bibles open, get them out, or failing this, at least just to have them ready for the end when I give you a bit of homework as well. It's been, a great year of grief and of loss, and it's been a year in which we've missed a lot of opportunities in which, we could have done in a normal year, but it's also been a year of great loss in the sense of whether it be job loss, economic loss, or actually personal loss in friends and family. And as someone with some experience in loss and in grief, I just wanted to give you some ideas of what the Bible has to say about grief and loss. And I've just got a few points and a few different passages in the Bible that we'll look at. And the first is that God knows our grief and God knows our loss. It wasn't part of His good order of creation. Loss, death is not something that He looks fondly on. It's not something that was part of His good order. In Romans 8, great chapter of the Bible, it says things like, creation is groaning. Creation is subject to these frustrations. It's not what it should be because of grief and of loss, and it's decaying. It's in a bondage to decay. But Paul says something great in verse 18. He says that our present sufferings are not even worth comparing to the future glory that will be revealed in us. He kind of says that God's good order doesn't allow for creation to be suffering, but you know what? When creation doesn't suffer, in the new creation in heaven, that's when we won't be suffering. That's when we won't be grieving. And that should kind of motivate us throughout our grief and our trial right now. The second point is that God the Father is the God of all comfort. Paul says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 1. If you want to read that, either now or after this video, Paul says that through discomfort and through suffering, that's when we see that God is the God of all comfort. He comforts us in our trials, in our sufferings, in our weakness, in our grief. When we feel those moments when we just, wish the world would swallow us up, that's when God is the God of comfort. But something really encouraging and supporting, which I read recently actually in John 11, when Jesus hears about his friend Lazarus who's just died, and Lazarus' sisters, Mary and Martha, come running up to him and they say, "Why couldn't you have been here? Why couldn't you have saved Lazarus?" And they're weeping over their brother. And one of the most extraordinary verses in the Bible, John 11, Jesus wept. It's the shortest verse in the Bible. It's easy to remember even for a klutz like me. But it's a really important verse of the Bible because we see that Jesus, in his humanity, has great empathy, great emotion for mankind. And he realizes and knows that death is not what it should be in a good created order. He weeps over his friend Lazarus, but he weeps over the grief and the weeping of the sisters Mary and Martha as well. And so we can take great comfort that Jesus, who was God, become man, even he weeps over death. Even he recognizes and sees that death is a horrible thing, and that grief and loss is a horrible thing as well. And lastly, I think, which is really important to see, 1 Peter 1. It's a fantastic chapter of the Bible, and it's something that's been very close to me, particularly in a time of grief and loss. And Peter says that, we'll suffer for being Christian, we'll face all kinds of trials. He says in chapter 4 that it'll be like a fiery ordeal at times. That's what it feels like, when we go through grief and loss. But he says that we can rejoice because our faith in God will be refined like a fire, like gold in a fire. He says these things just to comfort us, but he says these things that, God creates a purpose. He creates a purpose in what is otherwise quite a fruitless time of suffering. He says that the purpose of suffering is to recognize that this world is not as it should be, that this world is not ideal, that it has cracks, it has flaws, but actually God is going to create a new, better, perfect world. and he's going to do that through his Son, Jesus Christ. And his Son, Jesus Christ, ultimately was the person who suffered and grieved and lost the most when he was here on earth. God, perfect God, become man. That was humbling enough itself, let alone living for 33 years in utter service and utter humility, and then to die an embarrassing, shameful death, but only to be raised 3 days again. That was the kind of suffering and loss that the Son of God faced. And he's faced it far more than we will ever face. But we can take great comfort in that, knowing that through his grief and through his loss and through his suffering, that he has provided a way out of it. He's provided an escape out of the current grief and loss that we feel. So please feel free to reach out to us through Messenger or Facebook or Instagram. We really do encourage you to read, particularly those chapters of the Bible. They're particularly salient and really important on grief and loss. Please know that God knows your suffering. God doesn't want suffering to be part of this world. That God provides a purpose in suffering, and he does it through his Son, Jesus Christ. I hope you have a great summer, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers, guys.